Our mission is always the same. We take a dense stack of source materials, strip away the noise, and extract the precise insights you need to be well-informed.
And today, we are really getting into it. We're looking at a case that forces the law to confront, the most private failures of a marriage.
Yeah, this isn't about infidelity or abuse. It's about a cold, inexplicable nothing, an emptiness at the core of a relationship.
We're talking about the Philippine Supreme Court case Chi Ming Tsoi versus the Court of Appeals, decided back in 1997. And our sources are the official court decision, the transcripts, the medical reports, everything.
And the central issue is this idea of psychological incapacity. Now, for anyone listening outside the Philippines, you have to understand, traditional divorce there is, well, basically impossible to get.
Right. So annulment under Article 36 of their family code becomes this really critical legal pathway out of a marriage.
So the big question here, the one the court had to answer, was this. When a couple has never, ever had sexual relations, who's responsible? And can that failure be legally defined as a serious personality disorder?
Even if there's no physical problem, that's the key. Okay, let's unpack it.
Welcome to the Factatorium Podcast, where we talk about the most interesting and puzzling stuff in the world around us. I'm Ken.
And I'm Jamie. Come hang out with us.
So, the story kicks off like you'd expect. A big wedding, May 22, 1988, at the Manila Cathedral. Chi Ming Tsoi and Gina Lao get married.
But the breakdown, it was immediate. According to Gina's testimony, on their first night as a married couple, Chi Ming just went to one side of the bed, turned his back, and went to sleep.
Just like that. No conversation, no attempted intimacy.
Nothing. And it wasn't just first night nerves. She said it happened the second night, the third night, the fourth night. The pattern was set from the very beginning.
Wow. Okay, so Gina, I assume, is trying to fix this. She arranges a honeymoon, right?
Yeah.
A trip to Baguio to get some privacy.
She does. And this is where the story goes from sad to honestly just bizarre. Instead of a romantic trip for two, Chi Ming invites his mother.
Oh, no.
And Gina's mother, Gina's uncle, and his own nephew.
He brought a whole entourage on their honeymoon.
Turned it into a family vacation. And even there, he continued to invade her. He'd take these long walks by himself during the afternoon siesta, or he'd sleep on a rocking chair in the living room.
Anything to not be alone with his new wife.
Exactly. And this complete non-consummation went on for nearly 10 months, from May of '88 all the way to their separation in March of '89.
10 months. Gina even claimed she never saw her husband's private parts, nor did he see hers. I mean, the distress must have been immense.
It was. It's what led her to file for annulment against her. And this is her, quote, uncaring husband based on psychological incapacity.
So before the court could even get to the psychological part, they had to rule out the physical, right? Was he impotent?
Precisely. And so both of them went for medical exams. Gina was found to be perfectly healthy, normal, and crucially, still a virgin.
And Chi Ming.
He saw a urologist who prescribed some medication and told him to come back for a follow-up, but he never did. He just ignored the doctor's advice.
And this is where the accusations start to fly, and it gets really nasty.
It does. Gina's side started throwing everything out there. She claimed he was impotent, maybe a closet, homosexual.
What was that based on?
Really flimsy stuff, like she saw him using an eyebrow pencil or his mother's cleansing cream. She even suggested he only married her to get his residency status in the Philippines.
Okay, so that sounds pretty desperate. What was his defense?
He went on the attack. He claimed he was perfectly fine, physically and psychologically, that he loved her, and that she was the one who was always avoiding him.
He blamed her. After 10 months of him sleeping in a rocking chair on their honeymoon.
Completely. He said he'd try to be affectionate, and she'd literally remove his hand. He even said he tried to force himself on her once, but stopped because she was shaking.
That's a huge admission. And he claimed her lawsuit was just about what? Money?
He said she was either afraid of having to return his mother's jewelry or, and get this, she was afraid he would actually consummate the marriage.
It's just a mess of he said, she said. The court needed something concrete.
Exactly. So they ordered a second independent medical exam to settle the impotency question once and for all.
And what did that doctor find?
The finding from Dr. Alteza was unequivocal, crystal clear. After a medical examination, he concluded there was absolutely no evidence of physical impotency. Chi Ming was, medically speaking, capable of sex.
So that's the pivot point. The physical excuse is off the table. If he can, but he won't for 10 straight months. The question has to become why.
And that's where the case moves into new legal territory with Article 36 of the Family Code. The whole argument shifts from the body to the mind.
But I have to ask, isn't this a slippery slope? I mean, if a court just says unwillingness equals incapacity, doesn't that just create a backdoor for no-fault divorce, which the law there is designed to prevent?
That is the absolute core of the legal challenge. And the Supreme Court was very careful here. They had to prove his unwillingness wasn't just, stubbornness. It had to be a symptom of a grave, permanent, and incurable personality disorder.
So how did they draw that line?
They created a landmark precedent. They ruled, and I'm paraphrasing here, that a senseless and protracted refusal to consummate a marriage is equivalent to psychological incapacity.
So the sheer duration and the lack of any good reason for the refusal is what elevates it.
Precisely. They said if you're physically capable, but you simply refuse to perform your essential marital duties, and that refusal is senseless and constant, then the cause isn't just a choice. The cause is juridically seen as a deep-seated psychological issue.
What about his claim that she was the one refusing? How did the court handle that?
They found it completely unbelievable. For one, he never once tried to formally assert his marital rights. He just let 10 months go by.
Right. If you truly wanted to, you'd do something.
And then they made this really interesting cultural observation. They pointed to the innate modesty of the Filipino woman, basically arguing that Gina would never, ever have put herself through the public humiliation of this kind of lawsuit unless her frustration was absolutely real and profound.
So the very act of her suing was, in a way, evidence in her favor.
It gave her huge credibility. They figured if he really thought she was the one with the problem, he could have filed for annulment himself. But he didn't. He only reacted, which made his defense look weak.
So the case moves beyond the purely biological. The Supreme Court starts talking about a deeper kind of failure.
A much deeper failure. They start talking about the essential obligations of marriage. And yes, that includes sexual cooperation for the purpose of procreation, which they call the basic end of marriage.
And 10 months of refusing that, they argued, just destroys the whole foundation of the marriage.
It destroys the integrity or wholeness of marriage. They described his behavior, this constant reluctance towards a wife he claimed to love, as indicative of a hopeless situation and of a serious personality disorder.
But they went even further. They zeroed in on one specific trait.
They did. The absolute heart of the ruling was his absence of empathy.
Absence of empathy. That's a very high bar for a legal definition.
It is. The court said that a marriage isn't just about living together. It requires a deep sense of spiritual communion, a true two-way process.
And Chi Ming's coldness was seen as the ultimate violation of that process.
They used incredibly strong language. They said the cruelest act of a partner is to effectively say, I could not have cared less. They called his behavior fundamentally egoistic, the actions of someone who has nothing but himself.
So the psychological incapacity wasn't just a failure to perform a physical act. It was the failure to even care about the emotional state of his partner.
That's it, exactly. The lack of empathy was the diagnosis. The inability to connect, to give, to feel for the other person, that was the incurable disorder.
It really transforms the idea of marriage in the eyes of the law from a contract to, well, a communion.
It does. Their final words on it were powerful. They said marriage is for two consenting adults who come to it with love, respect, sacrifice, and a continuing commitment to compromise. His senseless refusal proved he wasn't capable of that commitment.
So when we boil it all down, what does the Chi Ming Tsoi case really mean for you for how we understand marriage law? The big takeaway seems to be that physical ability is not the whole story.
Not even close. The court will look at the behavior. And if there is a sustained, senseless refusal to fulfill a core marital duty, the law can now define that as a serious personality disorder. It's enough to completely void the marriage.
It basically says the emotional contract of a marriage, the promise to care, is just as legally binding as the physical one.
It validates the idea that a profound lack of empathy, of that spiritual communion, is a failure so complete that the marriage itself can be declared a nullity.
Which brings us to a final thought. This case was all about the act of consummation, but the court's reasoning about empathy and communion goes so much deeper. If a court can now legally evaluate a marriage's spiritual health, it raises a huge question. What other non-physical commitments, like mutual respect or shared communication, might judges be asked to rule on in the future? It's something to think about as you go about your day.